afternoon, everyone. It's a joy to be here. Real joy. And we have the whole day, so we'll just see how it flows and what the real calling is on the heart, because that is the most precious thing about coming together, is that it's for the prayer of the heart to be answered. You know, that's why we're here, and to let that be revealed and to relax into it, and really sink into just an invitation that we're all here for you. Like, imagine that, if like your calling and your desire for peace and for truth has drawn forth this whole day and everyone who's here, and it's all so that the question on your heart can be answered. So whatever that might look like, there might not even be words for it. It might not even be a formulated question, but there's a prayer there. And this is the day to let it be answered.
The books have arrived.
Okay.
I saw a stack of books.
Okay, beautiful. Hi.
Speaking of answers to prayers, there's a whole stack of books that just come in the door. How cute.
I'm Chris.
Chris.
Yeah, Chris. Alexander. I'm Rich.
Alexa. Patrice. I'm Janet. Marlene.
Zakaria.
Patil. James. Jude. Rita. Stephen. Charlotte. Suzanne.
Jeffrey.
Jessica. Kay.
David.
And I'm Kirsten. Okay, beautiful.
And I want to just save it for later. It's just like really popping up.
Perfect timing. We were waiting for Lindsay to come back, and now Alexander's got a burning question. That's the best way to start off with the burning.
So been gifted with these bodies. These bodies experience emotion bodies and the emotions that we experience are not really real and they're all an illusion. At the same time, there are many days where I really experience that it's a gift that's been given to us. So we should be using these bodies and the emotions to experience the fullness and the extent of what we're able to feel emotionally and whatever. So maybe it's not a question, it's more like a half question. It's just that you're giving these tools, I think, as a gift to experience this reality, this existence. There's some days where I want to just fully experience that in order to understand this reality more. And then there's other days where I know that it's not really real anyway, so will, so here's the question. Can or will this body and these emotions lead me to a path of understanding God more, and this existence more?
I'm thinking of Pocahontas. I always have to watch Pocahontas once a year, and that's really what Alexander's burning question is: can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Remember that song where she's whooshing around and the leaves and the colors, and you're just filled up and you feel like you're going to explode with joy. When Pocahontas is running, singing, can you paint? She's even got John Smith, she takes him, and they go over waterfalls. Remember that scene? I have to watch that movie at least once a year, but that's actually a good question, because even though the body was made by the ego, invented and projected, and God didn't create it, so it's not sourced. And even though we could say all upsetting, irritating, uncomfortable emotions were all made by the ego, although love was not. Love is real, and joy is real, and glee is real, and happiness is real, and all the derivatives of love are all real emotions, and pain, suffering, guilt, everything else is a projection. Or we might say it's just like a cloud blocking the light. It's not like the clouds are the reality, but it sure seems an awareness. They seem pretty real when you're experiencing. And so, what's beautiful, we've been talking about mystical experiences and everything, is that I think the more used you are by spirit, by love, by intuition, the more purified your awareness becomes, your heart becomes, the more that the upsetting emotions are pierced or dissolved or reinterpreted, then to that extent you come closer and closer to an experience of wholeness and completeness, which is really in need of nothing. Wholeness doesn't have needs. And the human experience is definitely one of needs. We have to admit that. And so we're going through a purification to transcend those. And your question is addressed in the book, and it's worthy of great attention because we're not to deny the awareness of the body. We are to use the emotions that you mentioned, all of them, as barometers, as touchstones, as feedback for purification. And so you might say the body and the emotions are absolutely to be welcomed in any way, shape or form that they arise in awareness. They're never to be pushed down out of awareness. They're always to be welcomed, because the purification has to involve bringing the darkness to the light and not hiding and protecting anything from the light. So to me, yes, that the answer to your question is it's a big, big yes. They have to actually be welcomed, and all of my practice and all Kirsten's practice has been to completely welcome everything without exception, and to know that everything is going right because everything's part of the purification, and it's always about inclusion and acceptance. It's never about rejection. It's never about making wrong, and it's never about excluding. It's an entirely inclusive process of integration and to come to wholeness. And that's really what this book's about, and that's what our life's about too. It just, every page of the book is filled with that, because it's, when we came together, that was the prayer of the heart. Kirsten's prayer of the heart was, I want to know a love that will never end, an everlasting love. And that was the prayer and remains the prayer to this day, in this moment. And then everything has been allowed, and that's what I like about the book. It really is not hiding anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and also it's about like the purpose. When the purpose is really clear out in front and it's for awakening, then the guidance that you receive for whatever is going to come in your life is going to be in support of awakening. You know? So if it's music, if it's a relationship, if it's moving to another place, if it's a new job, if it's going to the beach that day, if it's, you know, the holy encounter at the store, it's like the body's there, the emotions, the thoughts are all there, but the purpose is out in front. Yeah. And then you could say that is then, you know for sure that the spirit's use of the body is what is leading the way. And then it's like a seeing, and it's very restful for your mind, because you can just be open to practicing forgiveness and watching your own mind. And it's very different to having a purpose of seeking outside for the experience. You know, thinking, well, I want to go to the beach today to have that experience of what it brings me, you know, of whatever, feeling this, feeling rejuvenated, feeling, or I want a relationship because I want to feel whole and complete and know that I'm loved by someone, or I want when the purpose is something from the world will fulfill me, then it's this seeking outside that's never going to bring that fulfillment. Like the deep fulfillment comes from putting this purpose first of awakening, and then allowing like everything that's to be forgiven and seen to happen. And the fulfillment is, it's already there within. Like, it's already there, and yet it's just covered over by this belief that there's something lacking and something wanted or something needed from outside. And that's what's been so amazing on these journeys, is that, you know, what is being undone is the belief in sacrifice from the mind, which ultimately goes back to, you know, I've blown it, I've left God, I've lost the love of my life, you know, and then I want it back, so I need something from this world, you know. And yet with this, being able to give our life over to the Spirit and say, here, you take it, you guide me, it is the absolute opposite to what, you know, the ego says. The ego always says it's going to be a sacrifice no matter what. What do I have to give up? And yet this journey is one of being shown you're not giving up anything. Really, the opposite. You're going to be given absolutely everything you've ever wanted. Like, you're going to be given your heart's desire, because through saying, yes, I'll follow you, yes, whatever you would give me, you know, that's how we're shown that we actually have it, and that God's will for us is truly like our happiness. So.
It is a great, the body's brought up right away, the emotions are brought up right away, because those are so important in talking about practical spirituality. Any spirituality that avoids emotions in the body is, you might say, it's like airy-fairy, kind of just trying to do positively affirm your way. Oh, all is love and all is light, and if you have that as your experience, that's the greatest experience. But for most human beings, actually the 7 billion, that's not the experience. And the other one that you could throw in with body and emotions is choice. Does anyone remember that part in the first Matrix movie where Neo goes through all this stuff and he finally comes to the architect? And then he says to the architect, Neo says, the problem is choice. And the architect goes, apropos. It's a beautiful moment. The problem is choice. And when you think about it intuitively, if you go into your heart, if oneness is reality, if love and oneness is absolute reality, then choice must be the illusion, because you have to have two to have choice. It would make no sense. And when we talk about wholeness, we all go, oneness, wholeness, unity, unification, integration. Those all relate to oneness, and choice relates to two. So you might say that, as Kirsten was just sharing, if you let the Spirit guide everything, ultimately to realize the Self, to realize the Christ, the Buddha nature, the oneness, you would have to give the body over to the Spirit and say, use it for the good of the whole. You would have to give the emotions over to the Spirit and say, use them for the good of the whole. And you even have to give choice, which again is of the ego, because there's no choice in oneness. You have to give choice over to the Spirit and say, now use this choosing mechanism, whatever it is. I want to use it for love, for the glory of God, for wholeness. And that's what we call guidance. That's what intuition and guidance is giving even choice. Spirit, decide for God, for me. I want a happy day, I want a joyful day. If I make no decisions by myself, if I make no egoic decisions today, that is the day that will be given me. Happy day, joyful day, free-flowing day. And we can resonate with these ideas. We can go, internally, there's a resonance and a confirmation. But that's a worthy topic today, when you even to look at choice or emotions or the body in terms of, let's go deeper into that. Like, what does that really mean by giving the body, the emotions and choice over to the Spirit? How does that work out practically? Because that's where the questions come in. Every day, if we were so in line with Spirit that we had completely given over all those aspects, then that would be a guarantee of happiness for sure. And yet, if there's anything in your awareness where there's still a stuck spot, or still a regret, or even a little tinge of sadness, like a little wisp of sadness that comes across, or a feeling of sacrifice, like, wow, it all sounds great, but what do I have to give up? Those are things worth exploring too, because, as Kirsten said, in reality you don't have to give up anything for that state of mind.
Or I have given up, like if that's still there, like that, some belief that something has been lost. They're really good ones to bring over or bring up. As I often say, it's like leave no stones to trip on in your own mind. If there's something there that's it's like a little grain of sand or a little rock, something that's there that you just go, oh yeah, but I don't know how to deal with that. And if it just keeps getting pushed away, like a hurt or some really strong belief that something has been lost or gone wrong, someone else's fault or my own fault, it's like these are really important thoughts to bring up. They can often be like a key to unlocking or releasing something in the mind. Because if a conclusion is drawn, then it's like you just keep then witnessing the effects of that conclusion. And life, and it'll just keep showing up in other ways. And so much of this journey is about leaving no stone unturned. We're so worthy of being free, like really free of the past, free of any kind of hooks, where our identity got hooked somewhere, where there's a looping pattern of thought of, I wish I hadn't done that, or I wish it could have turned out differently, or these are like distractive patterns in the mind that we just want to keep welcoming to bring up. And I love those lines in the Course where Jesus says, he just talks about unworthiness. He says you don't realize you're worthy of constant attention. Constant attention. So it's like any little things that are there. It's like, no, bring them, please. He's saying, please bring them to me. Leave none of it unquestioned, so that I can help you.
It's interesting too that it's never really a question about the body, because oftentimes when people study really deep non-dual traditions, including in Course in Miracles, there can be an egoic reaction to some of the ideas as they're presented. Remember, in the Course, there's a line that says, where Jesus says that in no single instant does the body exist at all. It is always remembered or anticipated. So it starts to show from that sentence, like, wow, what a sneaky puff of nothingness this is, to have invented something that doesn't even exist, but appears to be remembered from the past, and appears to be anticipated, projected in the future. And if you think about it, every single regret that you've ever had is always related with the past. Something the body didn't do that it should have done, or something the body did do that it shouldn't have done. Or the future. All worries. No one's ever had a worry that wasn't connected to the future of the body. So really this is the gateway to the kingdom of heaven. This is the gateway to nirvana. At no single instant does the body exist at all. It's always remembered or anticipated. So really, the issue is never the body, but the issue is time. Time, linear time, the belief in linear time is the great deceiver. It's just a veil. You know how in the Bible it said there's a veil that was drawn over the Christ, a veil drawn over the light. Linear time is what the veil is all about. And we have Movie Watcher's Guide to Enlightenment, the movie Dark City. Eventually you get from the surface where there's all these projections and buildings and bodies and everything, and you get down underneath to the unconscious, and that's where these little creatures, these dark creatures with their mouths moving, and they're like little attack thoughts, and they're all worshipping something, and it's a big mask, and there's a big mask, and at one point the dong goes, the bell rings, and the mask opens up, and there's a clock underneath the mask. It's a great movie. It's like A Course in Miracles put into a movie. It's spectacular. You go, whoa, that's what the mask of the whole cosmos, of all of linear time and space is hiding. That's what the quantum physicists are onto right now. That's what the great mystics and sages, the avatars have been onto, Jesus, Buddha, everyone who's penetrated down underneath that mask comes down to the holy instant. That everything is perfect right now and always has been perfect, and there never was a problem. That's where the release comes in. And so we've used a tool called A Course in Miracles, where in the early lessons Jesus says we need to introduce new time ideas. Like he's going right at it at the beginning of his workbook, because he knows that that's the core problem. The problem isn't the body is neutral. You know, this Holy Spirit sees the body as neutral as a flower, as neutral as a cloud, as a planet, as a black hole. It's just completely neutral. But the ego is highly charged. It's judged the body so heavily. And that's where all the shame and guilt comes in. It's the shame and guilt of the ego, trying to make of the body an agent of error or sin, or call it whatever you want. So it's good. We can go into these topics very deeply, but underneath, that's why present contentment is the greatest gift that you could ever experience. And I'd have to say that part of me coming out here too is Kirsten has just been having a lot of mystical experiences at our monastery. And then Frances almost couldn't take me to the airport because she couldn't cut an apple. She started cutting an apple, and this was the night before she was going to take me to the airport to come out here, and she started to cut the apple, and then her mind totally merged with the apple, and there was no knife, and the apple seemed huge, it just seemed like, I can't do this. So in that state of mind, in the holy instant, it goes beyond the body. You can't cut an apple. You can't even slice an apple. Then she had thoughts, but I'm hungry, I should at least slice a lemon up and have a little lemon water if I can't eat the apple. But then she couldn't cut the lemon either. That's what, and Kirsten's had these experiences. I remember one in the book where we were at a Juan Valdez coffee park down in rural Colombia. Like you go to an amusement park like Disney World, Disneyland. This was a coffee park. And so they had little coffee stands with Juan Valdez's face, and it was lush green. But on that day, Kirsten went into the deepest mystical experience on that day, and she just ended up just taking my hands, and we would walk around, and she would just hold my hands like a little 3-year-old as we walked around this coffee park. And then we would come up to the place where they were serving the coffee, and there would be a menu, and she couldn't read, she could barely walk. She still walked like a little toddler, we couldn't walk too fast or anything, but it was like a little toddler, and she was just in that state. And now people in our community are more and more going into those. Jackie, Lisa, Francis, you, different ones, they're dropping into that state, and that's when you have to have the trust that you'll be taken care of, because the ego is going to say, this is going bad. If you don't have control over the body, you might as well be dead. Think about it, how fearful it would get if your body was paralyzed for an instant, and you went, I can't move my fingers, I can't, what might arise in your awareness, I can't move my body, I can't cut an apple, that's why this is so practical, is that you have everything in the universe is going to be orchestrated by the Spirit to help you move through those final fears of losing control over the body. Because you never really had control over anything, including the body. And that's what the Spirit has to gently bring back into awareness, that you had an illusion of control. But why would love create control? Think of it. What business would love, oneness, have creating control? Control doesn't really fit very well with that love.
And that's where the guilt is. The guilt is believing that you are in control, and therefore you can get it wrong as well as get it right. But so much of this journey is about actually letting go of control, letting go of personal control, and allowing the Spirit to start to show us the way, and then not only show us the way, which we start to receive through prayer and guidance, but then do it through us. And the more you go into that allowance of letting the Spirit do it through you, whether it's the singing, speaking, gardening, walking, playing,
doing the dishes,
and the doer, the personal doer self, which is that identity that's always pushed and then doubted or questioned. That's the ego. As that gets washed and undone, you end up in this experience of not being in control, and that's where the innocence is. imagine if it wasn't up to you, any of it, then how could you get it wrong?
Yeah.
It's really miraculous. And then you're just shown. But it does take a lot of faith. There's so much fear of letting go of control because it's not just this lifetime. You know, if you think about it, this is millennia of believing in personhood and believing in this life and that you have to do it. That we're personally responsible for making sure it gets done, whatever it might be. The right choices get made. You know, there's so much responsibility tied up in being a human being. And yeah, it's just such a gift to let it go. And yeah, for me, going into those more mystical experiences, there was fear at first that would arise. Would be like, oh, am I going to be okay? Like, what will happen? And yet the beauty was every single time there was someone there to hold my hand, you know, or just nodding, saying, stay, just stay. Just let it happen. And then they just went on and on and on to the point where, yeah, I would literally watch things get rearranged so that I could stay in it. Because there's such a sense of personal responsibility. For me, anyway, that's been like the biggest hurdle, or the one thing to really watch for and look for. And it started off from being very little, like saving the environment, saving animals, Greenpeace at the age of 9, vegetarian, save the whales, save the snails, you know.
Save the snails.
It didn't go so well for the snails. They were perfectly fine until I came along and tried to save them.
They were fine.
And then bringing that into the spiritual journey, and then having these beautiful opportunities, like with spiritual community, to oversee spiritual community, and then like be the counselor, and then watch how that personal responsibility is still there. But knowing that now this is the context now for really healing it, really daring to let the Spirit be in charge and watch what comes up and dare to not follow it unless it's the Spirit. So that's the other part of this. It's like everything is our spiritual journey. You know, when we give our life over to it, it's not that there's then spiritual time and non-spiritual time. It's like what is given us is for our awakening then, when we give it over to that purpose of forgiveness. I mean, that's how our experience becomes unified. We're no longer putting it in boxes. It's more like, okay, this is the day, and it's all for you. It's all for me to be with you and to forgive everything that's unlike love. And then just allowing that whole day to unfold and be shown us. And we get to see everything. That's what else is so miraculous about it. You don't have to worry about what it might be. I need to make it happen. I want to go deeper. You know, like as if there's some kind of mystery. A formula. Or I need my path to look a certain way. You know, it's like, well, this is it. Am I giving my full attention to it now? My absolute and full 100% commitment and attention to now, knowing that this very moment is my pathway to God.
Yeah, it's very different from how the world defines different pathways based on theologies or rituals or practices. And imagine that somebody asking you, what is your pathway to God? And you saying this moment, and really meaning it, like really going fully into it. Because some of us, like I used the pathway, A Course in Miracles, and it was titled A Course in Miracles. It wasn't titled A Course in Light or A Course in Love. It wasn't titled A Course in Revelation. It wasn't titled A Course in Ascension. It was titled A Course in Miracles. So when I really opened it and felt this is from Jesus, then I thought, he chooses his words very carefully. So he chooses his title very carefully. I think a lot of people go, what an odd name. A Course in Miracles. People think of miracles in the Bible, walking on water or parting the Red Sea or healing the sick, raising the dead. A Course? What? Course? C-O-U-R-S-E in miracles? Are you kidding me? You're teaching a curriculum in miracles, you're teaching what? And yet, when you really look at what miracles are involuntary and should not be under conscious control. That is fascinating. Miracles are involuntary. Here we are in California, a lot of the great transpersonal psychologists basically started in and around here in California, in Northern California. There's been all kinds of great progressive thinkers. Berkeley is very famous, and we have this sense. I remember studying psychology, and there was B.F. Skinner and rat psychology, I called it, conditioned response stuff that some of us took in high school and university. And then there was Freudian, psychoanalysis, and then there was humanistic psychology, Carl Rogers, Abraham Maslow. Then there was transpersonal, transcending the persona, transcending the mass. And then you start to realize that all of it is aimed at coming to this involuntary experience. Because then we also had parapsychology. Does anybody remember reading parapsychology about all the phenomenon, psychokinesis, telepathy, and all the different things? Well, I remember one point of parapsychology, they were studying yogis from India, and there was a perception that there's certain things in this world that are under voluntary control. Certain things that you can control in the world, and then there were certain processes and things that were beyond conscious control. And one of the beliefs was that the heart rate, like people, if you ask somebody in the street, can you control the speed of your heart? Most of the times they would put that in the involuntary. That's like involuntary. But then they found that the yogis could indeed control their heart rate. They could make it slow down, way down. They could control the temperature of their body by putting them in freeze chambers with a tiny little strap on. Instead of freezing to death, they would generate heat inside the freeze chamber. So then they started to say, well, the mind is much more powerful than we thought with all these experiments. Now we have Jesus, and he's given us a whole course to teach us one thing, that everything is involuntary. Absolutely everything is involuntary. That nothing of this world is under conscious control. Think of the release you have in your mind when you accept that. Never again will you give credence and belief to those hypothetical thoughts, coulda, woulda, shoulda thoughts. If only I had acted this differently, if only I had been better and loved more in this relationship, if only I had stayed and completed my master's degree, if only I had treated my father better when he was alive, or my mother better, if only I had had children, if only I had not had children. Think of all the hypotheticals. The ego is this crazy puffin there that's trying to run a guilt trip based on the idea that things could have been different than they are. And now what do our greatest teachers on the planet, what is Byron Katie teaching? Loving what is. It's coming through from here, it's coming through from Muji, it's coming from Byron Katie. It's starting to flood into our awareness that everything is perfect, and everything has always been perfect. And that's how we're going to experience our innocence, is by coming to that sense. So that's why A Course in Miracles for me was helpful, because it was 1,200 some pages, including a mind training workbook of 365 lessons, all to come to just one experience, that the miracle is involuntary and that everything without exception is involuntary, and that nothing could have ever been different than it is. In quantum, where everything is mind and everything is consciousness, in the holographic universe where everything is connected, in the quantum field where everything is perfectly connected, that's the truth. That's why the quantum field is innocence, because nothing could have been different. Guilt has no possibility. Shame has no possibility. Imagine just opening to that state of mind where you just accept divine innocence, divine perfection, divine order. That's another way. Isn't that magnificent? Isn't that, as they say in Spain, spectacular? Absolutamente spectacular. That's why I didn't know what it meant, but I could tell it was good. When I was down there, when they saw my face and they exclaimed, absolutamente spectacular. Like, yes! I could recognize the spectacular. Mente was mind. Absolute, unconditional mind is spectacular. That's what they were saying to me. It took me a while to get the translation, but I could feel it. I could feel it. So that's part of this, and that's why the book is helpful. I Married a Mystic, because has anybody ever had any guilt associated with food? Has anybody had any guilt associated with sexuality? Or with body and body image? Has anybody had guilt associated with past memories of behaviors? Or anticipating future things, like taking a final exam at UCLA. If there's a tension or an anxiety, there's something tied into a self-concept or an image there's an anxiety about, I want to do well on the exam. Who wants to do well on the exam? Oh, I had to start to ask myself that question at graduate school when my cat, this was Mo, short for Mohandas K. Gandhi, when Mohandas K. Gandhi, in feline form, was staring at me, we were both out watching the moon, and we both would look at the moon, and then Mo sensed that I had a little bit of anxiety going on. I was in grad school, and Mo would look at me like, "What are you doing?" "We're watching the moon." There's nothing more enjoyable than watching the moon with one of your best buddies, and yet I started to think about the exams, and Mo picked it up. He was giving me the look like, "Oh, come on. Be present. Haven't you ever read Ram Dass? Be here now." Yeah. So that's what it's all about. But in the book, of course, we talk about peanut butter. We talk about going to the grocery store, and she's just come from New Zealand, and where they have real peanut butter with real ingredients, and then going shopping with me in Cincinnati, probably at Kroger's, and starting to read the labels, and what's all this corn? Americans had corn and everything. Corn and the peanut butter? Starches, corn. And she read peanuts and oil and water, but she thought there should be nothing in this jar but peanuts and oil and water. And there's a lot of things in there that are not peanuts and oil and water. So that was the beginning of the undoing of the nutrition self-concept. And exercise, and all kinds of things around the body, and mother and father concepts, family concepts, and I mean that's what the book is filled with, was all the things that human beings struggle with. They may feel free in all aspects of their life, but whenever they meet with their mother or their father, it's turn into this little child again. I don't know, this thing comes over me, and I'm having lunch with them, and I turn back into this thing. It's the past, memories. just coming up into awareness. Like, I'm fine around my friends, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, and I go visit my parents, and it's same sticky thing, that Holy Spirit actually had us go and live in Kirsten's parents' house for, was it a couple months?
Yeah.
So then she had her
I
love.
don't think you lasted that long.
No, I think I went to me and Kevin's, and Spirit guided me just in and out of there. I was like a listener.
That's good.
How do you handle the mother-in-law and the father? You don't. You follow the Holy Spirit with every second. When the Holy Spirit says, it's time to leave, it's like, okay! And then back in, okay! But now Jackie's part of our community, so she's...
Yeah, Jackie's
Mom.
my mother. She introduced me to the course.
You still feel nigglings of that? You still are years over that?
No,
How are you being your mom? I mean, you just like, it's like being with David.
oh yeah. It's been with Jackie, we went through being mother-daughter, and then sort of being friends, and then being mighty companions on the journey, and then... But at that time, that was when I'd kind of launched on the journey, and she was still identified as a mother and a grandmother and a wife, and she was compromising in her life, so we couldn't really connect for a while there. But then once she took her steps and just went for it, then, but it's been a deep relationship journey, like a holy relationship, moving from special relationship to truly to holy relationship, where the last time we were in Australia together, her heart stopped, and I went and picked her up, and I drove her to the hospital, and we were driving there, and we just went into prayer together, and we felt so much gratitude. It's like, oh my God, this is it. We've done it. Like, this is the lifetime. Because we did some past life regression experiences together and saw that we'd been like husband or wife or sisters, and I saw in this past life experience that at the end of every lifetime was this tragedy. It was like a romantic tragedy where I lost the love of my life. I would be going across the plains, and I'd be shot through the heart by an Indian, and I'd lose the love of my life. Or we're in the Canadian Rockies, and the bandits would come by and killed me and burned the house down, and I lost the love of my life. It was like this romantic drama of a human story, lifetime after lifetime, and then this is the lifetime. I felt like that when that prayer was put out, I want to know a love that can't come to an end, because in this lifetime I had a beloved partner, and we were together 4 years, and then it just came to an end, and we couldn't figure out why. It's like, why does this issue, this invisible problem keep coming up? And then I just feel like I want my space, and I want to be away, and he wants to marry me. It's like this invisible, later on I realized it's the ego and fear of intimacy and not really knowing what the Spirit's calling and purpose was. But this lifetime was this prayer, I want to know a love that can't come to an end. And then when Jackie's heart stopped, and we were going down to the hospital, and I just said to her, wow, if this is it, if it's time for you to lay the body aside, like, we did it. We know who each other are. We know that we're the Christ, and that this love is eternal. And it was such a beautiful healing moment. We just celebrated it. We turned up at the hospital, and she had all these tests done, and it was just a complete letting go. And then it turned out that the doctors found there was absolutely nothing wrong with her. And then she saw a pattern where she'd been getting into the doer again, and it was enough to make her heart stop. At that point in her journey, she'd gone so deep into prayer, and she just had 3 months on her own, living by herself up in the hills, and she'd come down and joined in with spiritual community again, and she'd had some responsibility come up and was just starting to push herself to do what wasn't in her heart, and then her heart stopped. And that was such a wake-up call too. It's like, well, that's the end of compromise then. Like, you literally can't do that anymore. And that's what this is coming to. It's like so much of our life in the past, we just compromised and did what we had to do because it needed to be done, and kept pushing, our heart's calling away. And this is where it comes to. You literally can't. Your heart will stop because it's not your calling anymore to compromise, and you can't do it. You just can't make yourself do it. And that's what my experience is. It's not that dramatic that I would die, but I literally can't. Like, if I'm not moved by love to do something, it's like nothing in me can force myself to do it. Whereas in the past I'd have been doing what needs to be done, what I believed needed to be done to keep the world going around. And now the world can just stop.
Because Buddha had it. Here we are with Buddha. Buddha said empty your mind. Didn't he say empty your mind? Empty your mind. That's exactly what Jesus says in the Course in Lesson 189. Empty your mind of every thought that you think is real. Hold on to nothing. He really, he's giving that, and Jackie's a good example because, when I first met Jackie, she was a Course in Miracles student, and it's in the book, her and her friend Mia brought me there together. Mia was from Sweden, and her husband Lars, Jackie and Mia got together and said, we want to bring David, he's living the Course, and this is our practice, so we want him over here in New Zealand. And so they said to Lars, can we use your credit card to buy his ticket? And Lars said, okay. You heard of Lars and the Real Girl, this is Lars and the Real Mystic. So I fly down there, and then we had this beautiful dinner together. It was mentioned in the book. There was another man there who was with us too that didn't make the book, but I can't remember his name. He was a young man that just was tagging along. And we had this joyful thing, and it was so joyful. But it was also, I think, for Kirsten and for Jackie, it was like the beginning of like the real falling away and the emptying of the mind of all the concepts, including mother and daughter and wife and Course in Miracles student, and there was a bunch of concepts. And now, as I've said before, everything's involuntary. I mean, when Kirsten got into the Course, Jackie was happy. Then when Kirsten dove off the deep end with the Course, Jackie was enraged. Like, my God, I don't mind my daughter getting into spirituality, but I don't want to lose my daughter to God. You see where the loss idea and the attachment can be there. So it went from happy to, oh my God. But then Jackie just kept taking it, and she's had so many miracles over the years, even a couple of levitating experiences. But even the levitations, the body leaving the ground, are involuntary. They're just perceptions. They aren't reality. But those are perceptions of a lightening of the concepts, of the gravity of this world. And that's, you might say, that's what's so great about the miracle. I just watched the movie 8 Days a Week, and I went with Frances, and she just bawled and cried through the whole movie because it was so much love, so much joy, so much camaraderie, all of them going through all those experiences together. And that's really what it's about, to keep everything light and start to see the joke of this world. The Beatles were pretty good at...
Oh, it was a Beatles movie.
Beatles movie.
Of course.
Yeah. Ron Howard's new Beatles movie just opened. We tried to go, but here in LA, all the shows were sold out yesterday. But it's, if you get a chance, if you want to get lit up, take a group and go see Ron Howard's 8 Days a Week. Yeah.
Is it in the theaters?
Yeah. Right now, yeah. It's a miracle. It's a miracle movie. I was saying I could use it as a spiritual community mind training movie. The Beatles through the 1960s, you could come and use a big screen TV and do like a whole afternoon session on trust, on faith, on hanging together in love, on choosing what purpose you will follow, on not going through the motions, even when there's fame and money and sex and all these things and drugs involved, not faking it, not going through the emotions. It's like a training video for living in spiritual community. Even though that they wouldn't probably call it that. They went to India and they saw Maharishi and all these, but actually those four living together, and then eventually their partners and wives, the whole thing is really a great training video. You don't have to go through everything they went through to just get it first, like into your heart by watching the movie,
Came here at the request of Rita, but it really was a request of the Holy Spirit. Since December, major opening my heart and my mind and my spirit has been happening. I started doing the course a year ago, 2015, with the gentleman at Unity of Tustin, and we do the texts, we do the lessons, and we do the teacher's manual, and we do that in the evening on Friday, but I've been taking it myself, his syllabus, and studying it myself. And it seems like, to me, in this last year, my heart has been opening more and more to there was never anything wrong. And everything was right. Exactly the way it was supposed to be. For this heart opening that I'm having at this present moment in this room with you guys. Many things happened. But you were talking about family. And through my addiction, I left my children many years ago in 72. My daughter was 2 and my son was 6. But that healing this year, the opening of my heart and the opening of their hearts and the opening of their stepmother, their mother, their human mother, I was the birthing mother, but has been absolutely, totally A Course in Miracles. It was nothing of the ego at all. And I was invited to be taken to their home, to be with them through her passing. And it was amazing for me. Now, my children are fully present in the now moment today. But my ego wants to continue to say, what is my part with them now? And my part with them now is to bring them what I'm experiencing right here. Because my daughter gave me radical forgiveness in 2011. I had been connected with my son for a little while, but my daughter, in 2011, she said to me, Charlotte, there's no forgiveness necessary. You did exactly what I needed to have done to me. So I was with the people that I was supposed to be with to have the experiences that I'm having today.
Wow. That's the thing you hear.
And there's the radical forgiveness.
Yeah.
But my ego boy wants to tug on that and tug on it. And this is what happened. I'm going to stop talking in a minute, but what happened, because I could just go on, but what happened was we had gone to Nebraska and we came back. But my daughter wanted me to go to Berg Williams with her about 3 weeks ago on a Saturday. And I went with her. Thank you. And I went with her. And after we did the massage in the spa, she said to me, "Can I go to your home?" And I said, "Of course." And I took her to my home. And she's sitting in a chair like you are, and I'm sitting on the bed. But first of all, when we went in, she must be more evolved than, because I have a real person with more evolved than I think, right? And she walked around my room and she assessed everything that was in there. And she sat down in the chair and then she looked straight at me. And she said, "Wow." She said, "You know what?" She said, "You're one of the most spiritually evolved women I've ever been in the presence of." But she said, "There's something that's blocking you from me." Will you please let that go? No more guilt, no more remorse, no more shame. It's necessary because I want to have a relationship with you, which is totally amazing. And there was a block, and I had to clear that block away. And of course it was a family secret that I had told to one person only, of confidence. And it was finally revealed, and the pressure is off. And I'm walking through this vortex of, wow, oh my God. And then people are inviting me to things like this. And my head wants to say, no, I can't go, I can't afford to do that. And my heart, finally I just text Rita and I said, yes, I'll go with you, pick me up. Because Topanga Canyon was a healing for me as a child. I would go away from the domestic violence that was happening in our family and be with my aunt here in Topanga Canyon. And the call was coming back to me. To this place. I've been here once before, in 2009, to a meditation class on a Sunday morning in a park somewhere here in Topanga. So, when you do say yes, completely and totally, to the Course in Miracles, it was brought to me after my husband passed away by a really close friend of mine. And he had gone to Unity and he said, he brought this blue book home and he goes, "Oh my God, you have to read this." And then we started doing the lessons every day, and then he took me to Unity, and guess what the man's name was? David. David now was teaching the course at Unity of Testing. A beautiful soul, just like your David here. And I can tell that from his Because my heart is opening to feeling that. That it's real. This is not phony. This is not, like drink the juice and everything.
We forgive you, David Koresh. That's a different one. The Kool-Aid is a different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there was a thing that came to my church that's called evolutionary collective, and I got scared with that one. But I'm having a different experience in your environment here, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
We love it here. We love being invited here. We have so many miracles. It's so natural. And every time I've come here, it's just been absolutely miraculous. And California, just amazing and miraculous. And right when we were pulling in, Priya was pulling out, and she was, oh my God, I didn't know you were coming. I have to go to work today. How long are you going to be here? I want to come back after work. And it was so beautiful because she was here. I think the first time I came to do a weekend gathering, her boyfriend had just broken up with her, and she went through. We sat out at the little thing out there and looked out over the skyline, and she just went through in one weekend, just purging and clearing every thought that she'd ever had, and started to see it's all perfect and it's all happening for the good, and just totally lit up. And now, I met Lindsay too, and they've moved in here with Zach, Zachariah. So it's pretty good.
It's going well.
Yeah, I love it.
Everyone's happy.
And then you coming and sharing that story, how it's even coming back to Topanga Canyon as part of it. It's very symbolic of just letting go of the past and letting it all be reinterpreted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
That was beautiful.
Suzanne, would you be able to play
Okay,
a little?
that's funny because I was just thinking I'm being healed of my attachment to this.
What were you thinking?
I'm being healed of my attachment. Just 1 second before you said that.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
I'm going to stand because I have no more room. My arms.
line from the Course was coming to me, a healed mind does not plan. And Jesus goes into that in great detail about how making plans are a defense against the truth, and yet, like in this world, we just seem to do a lot of planning and putting a lot of forethought into everything. And it's almost proven. I used to be a teacher, like a kindergarten teacher, and then early primary, and I work with children with special educational needs, and so I made special development plans, and the better that I planned, the more successful the outcome was, and I could chart this learning, judge it, grade it, tick boxes. And I didn't realize how addicted I was to planning until I was called to go down to Argentina and to be there for a month with a group of students, course students, and to hold gatherings there for a month with them. And I watched as I sat there in prayer, like in the morning if I was going to have an evening gathering, and I would just sit there and I wanted to know what the gathering was going to be. And the intensity of needing to know what to plan for was so strong and so intense. And I just sat there and watched it, like, okay, Jesus, tell me, where in the Course is it? Is it true empathy? Is it holy relationship? Is it special relationship? What are we going into tonight? Like, I have to be the deliverer of the miracles. I have to provide everyone with a deep experience.
Yeah.
And I could just see this sense of responsibility for being the one, who had to know in advance. And I just worked it, and I sat there and I would watch this need to plan, and then I'd go, okay, just relax. Finally, I'd let it all go into peace, and then be like, okay, I'm ready now, what is it? It was like an addiction to needing to know. And there were times over that month where I did receive a download of what it was going to be for that morning or that night. And then there were other times where I received absolutely nothing. And then sure enough, that night one of the students would walk in and they just came with their heart bursting with something that they'd just gone through, and that was the topic for the night. And if I'd sat there and planned it all myself, I would have completely been an interference with what was meant to happen. And yeah, it's just a huge walk of trust to be able to let go of that need to plan and need to know the future. And what he says in that section is, a healed mind does not plan. It just receives the plans, and carries them out. And so that's how we live. We do receive a lot of plans, a lot of awareness of what's happening, and can be scheduled, particularly David, like with conferences, for example. He might be scheduled into a conference for next year, even the following year. And yet, it's a very different feeling. It's like being invited or hearing it, and then being in prayer, and then answering the call, like, yes, lock it in, or no, can't feel it yet, or can't commit to it yet, because we're not aware of the whole picture yet. And that's what I found on my journey, is this, it's really a journey of deepening into trust and really letting go of that personal responsibility on every level to be able to be quiet and still, to actually be able to have an empty mind and then be shown what the plans are or what's going to happen.
I'm got a good roadmap too, because lesson 135 is what you're referring to. A healed mind is relieved of the belief that it must plan. He even puts the relieved word in there. But since the title of the book is I Married a Mystic, and when you look at marriage, I think there was a couple vows that came in there, and one of them was I love you now.
There was one. And I trust you.
And I trust you. So those are the two vows. Those were our marriage vows. I love you now. I trust you. And then the trust and the love got put to the test. It's like throughout the book, the vows are made. It's like an offering to God and holy relationship. I love you now and I trust you. And when you were talking about lesson 135 there, I was thinking, Jesus is so good, he not only tells you that if there are plans to be made, you'll be told of them, which is what we experience, but basically he gives 3 conditions. If you want to stay in the flow, if you want to stay in the joy, if you want to stay in the peace, the happiness, the love, here are 3 conditions for that. So isn't that practical from the Master, to not only say, love you one another and love the Lord thy God, but to give you 3 conditions to watch out for, so that you'll stay in the love, you'll stay in the vows. And so the only thing that can possibly take you away from the love and the trust is if you attempt to activate the past, organize the present, or plan the future. Really simple from Jesus Christ. Just 3 things. 3 little things that you have to remember. And so I'm thinking now, I'm still in the symbol of ordained minister, but I do still get called upon for marriages and so forth. But that would be a great way. I love you now, I trust you, and I promise not to activate the past, organize the present, or plan the future. Those are really good vows. Whether it's a boyfriend-girlfriend, or a girlfriend-girlfriend, or boyfriend-boyfriend, whatever holy relationship, whatever the form, if you could live with that in your heart, live with that, with your employers, eventually you may be washed away of certain types of employment. If your employment requires you to activate the past, organize the present, or plan the future, I'd say you might want to switch employers. There is one within you that will never have you activate the past, organize the present, or plan the future. You'll get into divine providence real quick. Find out what Mother Teresa and St. Francis and all these, Jesus and all of them were talking about. But you see, that's where the connection is. That's where your source is. That's where your joy is. That's where your love. That's where your sustenance. It all comes from the divine. And the divine will never have you activate the past, organize the present, or plan the future. And it's fun. I guarantee you you will have fun in your life. The Beatles, I watched that Beatles movie. You don't think they knew what they were going to say when they went in front of a press conference. No way did the Fab Four know what they were going to say. I watched the video, and I would watch the press come firing the questions at them, and then I would see like Brian Epstein on the side just going, he was, the manager concept was just, ooh. Or when they started using marijuana and taking some acid and experimenting after years of success with, slowing down the music and speeding it up and doing all kinds of psychedelic things. George Martin's face, their producer, he was, but there was so much love there. He knew, let them do it. They have to do it. They have to do it. So what a gracious producer to have. He was like a father figure to them, in many ways, and yet he let them do it, and he loved them, and he supported them. And that's one of the biggest things I took away from that movie, 8 Days a Week, was Paul McCartney saying, we really had to have faith in each other, and we had to have faith. The people around us had to have faith in us. And I could really see that. They all had faith in each other. And Brian Epstein, they had faith in the Beatles. It's the only way we wake up is through having faith. We have to trust. Even in this house, Zakaria's got this house, and when I first met you, there was one partner here, and then you had a career, and my gosh, it's been beautiful. You're just going for it. And now even with the Peaceful Ninjas, it's a mind watcher, I'm sure, major mind watcher, because you have to have that faith, and you have to have that trust, and you have to be surrounded by those that have the same faith and trust. And that's the only way that it works. People like to say, "Oh, give me challenges." What? Why would you pray for that? Pray for faith, pray for support, pray for reflections of love. What's going on here, is a beautiful witness of authentic awakening. All the ingredients are here. You don't need anything more. You need not look outside for anything to be different. You need not look to the future. I was watching the Beatles when they made their movies. Oh my God, they had so much fun. And people have asked me recently, "Are you going to make a movie?" And I said, well, only if I can have as much fun as the Beatles did making their movies. Then I would make a movie. Only. And they even added in the thing that they were saying, we have to have a theme. Every time they make a thing, we have to have a theme. They all sit together. What's our theme? Ringo's in trouble. That was the theme of their movies. We're going to make another movie. What's the theme? Ringo's in trouble again. And then they would make their movies and just have so much fun, taking it lightly. And this was also in the area of the Vietnam War and bombings and all kinds of things like we've got going on now. The 60s.
Yeah.
Here, we shouldn't be afraid of anything that's happening now. It's already all happened in the 60s. The Beatles lived through it. They're still. Paul and Ringo are still going strong, They're still going. But we have nothing to be afraid of. We have nothing to be afraid of. We can have fun. We need to have fun. We need to be just as inspired as they were. They were carried along like a twig in the river. They didn't know. Were they planning the future? They didn't really know. I think Brian and then later George coming in, they helped kind of shape them. Brian helped, make them, bought, suits for them, and, taught them how to dress and all these different things so that they'd be popular and helped shape their music. But they were more, I think, sent in by the Spirit to have the biggest impact possible on the whole planet. That's why Brian and George were, and all of them, they came together for the biggest impact. And Frances was sitting there watching with me, and she was raised in Beijing, China, and she had no awareness of the Beatles growing up. So she just cried and cried and cried during the whole movie. This explosive love and joy. Imagine growing up without the Beatles. She did grow up, and then she just cried and cried. Then she came home and she couldn't cut the apple. Speaking of Apple records, she couldn't cut the apple, and because she so allowed the experience of the love. And that's all we're asked to do, is to go fully into that joy and that love. And to give ourselves the allowance and the permission to truly follow that heart, the tickle of our heart, without compromise.
Yeah, and it's about us and God. We're not dependent on the world for this. If you look at what was happening in the 60s and you look at what was happening now, the world was made as an attack on God, as a place where God could enter not. It's still the same purpose to the ego. The ego's not going to change its purpose. Our purpose is what changes, and this moment is for us. And if our happiness is dependent on the world changing, on something in the world being different, on a relationship in the world even being healed, then our purpose and our function is being dependent on the world in some way, and that's like the activating the past or being dependent on changing the future, activating the present. There's some kind of working it out mechanism that's happening in that state of mind. And I watched this beautiful movie the other week about Saint Bernadette, the one at Lourdes. I don't know if any of you know the story. She saw Mother Mary. She had some visions of Mother Mary. And then she was told to dig in the ground, and then this well, this sprung up, the spring, with all these healing properties, and people have made pilgrimages there ever since, for decades. And I watched that movie, and the ego characters, they could have been like the politicians and the, CNN nowadays. Like, it was absolutely no different what was happening then, like in the early 1900s. It was almost word for word. I was like, oh my God, it's the Unholy Instant. It's just on repeat. It goes from a black and white movie to a colour movie, but it's no different. It's no different at all. And that's what's so touching about the Beatles, is like they were going for it for themselves. They would shake it up, baby, for themselves. And it was all about their own connection and their own little community of four, and those who had faith in them, who could join them and support them to just launch and go for it. And that's where the inspiration is.
And the music, let alone the music. The lyrics and the songs for all time.
Yeah. And it has a huge impact. And that's the same with every musician you see who has, there's an Australian group called Hillsong. They were a little youth group who loved Jesus and got together in one of their friends' basements to sing worship songs. And they're so into it. They were like singing rock and just this whole kind of grunge, and their songs got more and more into worship. And then they were asked if they would kind of play at a church, and they did. And then a pastor got hold of them and said, oh my God, we need to share you. There's a movie coming out about them soon, but they have millions of people into their music. And there's this documentary on them, and one of the guys was saying, we are like the most how did he put it? He said, we are the
most unknown.
We're the most unknown popular group in the whole world.
Yeah,
Nobody knows their names. Because it's not about them, even. It's all about their relationship with God. And yet their music is, everyone sings their music in all these churches across Australia, and it's getting beamed out now into America and across the world. And it's just a testimony to, let it shine. It's for you and God, and then it happens to be a huge blessing as a reflection of it.
Yeah, great symbols of don't hold back, don't hide your light. Yeah, how important it is. It's everything. And that's, I know for you that what was it, within the span of a year you were playing the guitar? When you're just leading a devotional life, then the fruits of the Spirit, the gifts of the Spirit, just effortlessly come. They're not a matter of training. I mean, we have a lot of great movies in our Movie Watcher's Guide to Enlightenment, and I like the one with Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson with The Island, because the skills and abilities start to seep through, and the ego looks like, how can that happen? Some of you might seen on Facebook and YouTube these child prodigies who play the violin at 3 years old, amazing singers, and they say, how could they have developed the skills in 2 years or 3 years as children? But see, mind is not in the body. The soul, the eternal soul, is not in the body. That everything in this world is simply a reflection of what's going on in the mind. And so, what people would say from a reincarnation perspective is it's kind of carried over from lifetimes, but it's even deeper than that. It's all just a reflection of mind. Everything, all the skills and abilities, everything we perceive is a reflection of what's in our consciousness. Without exception, everything in the cosmos is a motion picture of consciousness. And that's why it's important to purify consciousness. That's why we empty the mind, as Buddha and Jesus taught us. That's why it's so important of what they taught us, to put it into practical application, because they are onto it. They are demonstrations of witness of what is possible. That's why we followed them, because we had the hope in our hearts that we could have the same experience. Not by making them idols outside of ourselves, but seeing them as reflections of our consciousness, showing that we're ready to wake up. And that's the beauty of all this. It's very empowering. It doesn't create dependencies. It doesn't create addictions. It frees the mind to be divine, which is what it is. It's not locking it down into these limitations. So it's really exciting in the sense that so many things have pulled through. We're looking at virtual reality stuff now. I'm reading the ones that are advancing with Tesla cars now, electric cars out here in California, Elon Musk and everything. I was watching something the other day where he was saying, well, between philosophers, progressive thinkers, scientists, all of them got together, and from their scientific, philosophical minds, they were saying, we now believe, 50% of us now believe that what we consider the world is a simulation, like in the Matrix. 50%. These are not avatars and mystics. These are 50% of philosophers, scientists, and everything now believe that what we perceive in the world is 50% believe that this is a simulation. Now, beyond that, they think that it's a future intelligence or future race that's having fun using human beings and this planet as part of a simulation for entertainment. That's basically what they got. So God isn't quite in the picture yet. But you can see from their perspective, they're just seeing by the way things are working that there seems to be no control over it. Like there's something beyond. And I could say, well, the intuition, the Christ mind, Jesus made it through the Matrix, made it beyond the Matrix, he transcended the Matrix, he was the first to transcend the Matrix, and guess what? As the first to completely transcend the Matrix, he was put in charge of the plan of awakening. So everything you perceive every day, on the news, down in your swimming pool, over in that city, on that canyon, on the hill, in this country, in this star system, in this galaxy, or whatever, JC Central is behind all of it. JC Central is orchestrating everything. You watch your politicians, you watch the political race, you don't even have to worry now about the outcome, what's coming in November, because JC Central is behind it. JC doesn't miss a thing. Once you achieve the atonement, which is the complete transcendence of the Matrix, then the Matrix is at his disposal, or her disposal, its disposal. It's not a he or she. It's this presence of love now that is orchestrating everything. And that's why I told you everything's involuntary. You can really just enjoy everything to the fullest. Even if you have something to eat and you got to run to the bathroom and throw up, enjoy it to the fullest. And why? Because JC Central is behind it. He's got you behind the vomit, whatever. It's still there. Behind world wars, behind everything, behind terrorism, there's still a plan, a greater plan that's using it all to bring about the awakening, so that everyone comes into that experience. That's been what I've been reveling in these recent months. I mean, I watched something on the news. Yeah. Whatever's happening. Yeah. How's the election going? It doesn't matter. It's really beautiful when you think about it, because that's, everybody's heard about the divine order. Everything is in divine order. It's not that it won't, it will be. It is. And that's where you can rest your mind. That's where the words come out of your daughter's mouth, and you can go, whoa, like in the Matrix. She might as well jump from one skyscraper to the next. And mom goes, whoa, because that's the magnitude of it. Like it's all healed. It is a time of celebration. The Beatles were celebrating, we really could feel, I still feel it. That's why I love to listen to their music. It's a celebration. There's a reason to celebrate. There's a real reason to celebrate. It's not kind of wishful thinking. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, I hope. It's glorious. It's absolutely glorious. Imagine waking up every day with that thought on your mind and then going, I'm going to have some fun today. I'm going to have some fun. Instead of like, oh, what's on my list? You've got to go to lesson 135 about healed mind is relieved of the belief that it must plan. And then say, you who is in charge of the Great Awakening, you take care of my list. Mm-hmm. I give you my list. I'm going to have fun today. Mm-hmm. We're going to have fun today because I give you my list.
Exchange a little P plan for a big P. Your plan.
Yeah, wow.
His plan is joy. The little plan is a lot of work. And things just keep getting added to that list.
Right.
It's a trick.
The never-ending list.
The never-ending list.
Can I read a very short poem by an old mystic, Rumi, from Persia? It's about... Listen, O drop, give yourself up without regret, and in exchange gain the ocean. Listen, O drop, bestow upon yourself this honor, and in the arms of the sea be secure. Who indeed should be so fortunate, an ocean wooing a drop? In God's name, sell and buy at once, give a drop, and take this sea full of pearls.
That's so amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Listen, oh drop. You're giving me ideas for my next sermon whenever that comes. Yeah, pulpit. Listen, oh drop. Be humble, oh drop. Give it up, oh drop.
When you were talking about the Beatles, I was thinking of the monkeys.
Oh yeah.
How fun their movies were.
Oh my gosh. I grew up with the monkeys. Don't get me started on the monkeys.
I love that.
Childlike.
Might be lunch.
Yeah. Yeah. Here we
Look already.
come. Walking down the street.
Hey, little monkey.
Yes. That's what was in my mind.
Hey, with a miracle.
Yeah.
Spreading all the miracles
Just you
around.
don't know that.
We're too busy living to put anybody down.
Yeah.
Go wherever we want to. You could say we go wherever we're guided to. Do what we're guided to do.
Hey, with a monkey. What is the last line? It's really good.
We're too busy living to put anybody
You
down.
did say it over and
Yeah. Okay, well it sounds like we're ready for a lunch break.
Did you know the last words
over. Having a little break.
of the song? Okay.